Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes recap for Game of Thrones, Season 6, Episode 1. They're calling this one The Red Woman. And I'm here with Tony Southcott, my co-podcaster. It feels like, to me, Tony, just to start off with, that this episode is sort of correcting some problems the previous season had.
Yeah, it definitely felt like that. And the first episode that you get in all of these seasons is also setting the table for what's to come. So there's definitely a little bit of action, but there's also a lot of like, okay, these people are here. This is exactly where things are going. We kind of spell it out a little bit. We just throw everything at you, basically.
Well, and I like to, they start right off with Jon Snow in the snow. He's dead, or really, really looking like he should be dead.
Yeah, he's pretty pale.
The guy, like, I thought it was interesting that all of his 5 best buds just happened to be there to find him.
Yeah, like they were on the watch or something, or like the way I interpreted that, they probably were like, oh, they probably sent those guys out on an errand so they wouldn't be there or something like that, but they don't explicitly say what's going on with that. It's just all 5 are all of a sudden in the room.
Yes, well, I'm sure if once the book eventually comes out, they'll have a lot more detail about where they were all at, but that wasn't a big detail, and I like that it was Davos that found him. It was kind of fitting that he's sort of the outsider there, and yet Jon Snow is really one of his only allies, and him and Jon Snow have been working together. He came to help him out, and now Jon Snow's gone, and nobody else in the fort really cares who he is or what he's doing.
Yeah, the only other person is someone that he hates, and that's Melisandre.
Yes, on a personal level at least. Although it was interesting to see him sort of acknowledge, like, she can do some stuff, you guys. Not a great person, but especially towards the end of the episode. And so I thought for sure we were going to see her come into the room, and she was... But, I mean, we do see her come into the room. She's there, she pops in, and she's just, like, pale and white and thinking... I mean, she says, I saw you fighting in, at Winterfell. I saw the prophecy in the flames. It had to be there. And, Davos is like, well... I don't know what you saw, but I'm looking at a dead dude right now, and he ain't fighting nobody.
And it's like for her, it's the first time that her faith in this has been tested. Everything she's seen, everything she's set out to do, she's been able to just do that through the Lord of Light.
Yeah, and, well, we saw that it's this payoff of the end of the previous season. We saw her have a vision of Stannis victorious as well, and that didn't pay off the way she thought it was going to. The way I see this world working, I think all of those prophecies are eventually going to come true, which is why I'm still on board the Jon Snow eventually resurrected train. Good thing he's in a cold place where he's not just going to rot. Which, jumping ahead a little bit, but I could not help but think, and they actually mention it as well, when Myrcella finally comes back and she's on that ship, I'm like, that is not like 2 days to get there. Yeah,
that's at least 2 or 3 weeks to get to Dorne. She's going to be...
at this point. And
it's like, hope you brought a lot of salt on that ship.
Well, they are in the ocean.
That's true. Just dunk the body a few times.
I don't know if that's how that works, Tony. But
yeah, I don't know about mummification at sea. I'm sorry.
But Davos kind of figures out, like, all right, we're gonna be in deep trouble here if we don't get some help. And they're like, we'll go down fight. All of Jon Snow's friends and stuff are ready to go down swinging. And Davos says, listen, we can go down fighting, but maybe let's give ourselves a shot and call the other people who might possibly care that the dude who saved their lives has just been killed. And so one of them goes off to run to find the wildlings. I don't know how he gets out and why they couldn't all just run. It seems like maybe there was a reason that we just didn't get told. Again, once the book gets brought out, I'm sure that they'll go into great detail. But it's one of those things, in the moment you're accepting it. But so that gets sent off, and then we get to the watch, like the sort of the meeting where the guy just gets up and he's like, "Yep, I killed him." And I thought I was really surprised that he came right out and said it, Tony.
Yeah, I was gonna think like, oh, like we've had this cabal come out, but now we need clear leadership, and like I thought he was gonna play it that way, but he's always been pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and it's interesting. He plays that card. He says, yes, I'm a murderer, but I always did what I was told, and I'm not a liar. And the way he describes it, you kind of don't hate him. At least I didn't, Tony. I was thinking, like, okay, he says that line towards the end. He says, "I know that Jon Snow did what he thought was right, but him doing what he thought was right put us in a position where we had to do what we thought was right, and it was a different thing." And you can't hate the guy. He's not.
Well, it's a conflict that's been going on for literal thousands of years between the wildlings and the Watch. You're not going to mend that overnight, despite Jon being a good enough leader to actually let them do it in the first place.
Yeah, it's so tricky because you can see where he's coming from, and they know that he's right, but they can't let go of that. They can't let go of their hatred of the wildlings, and to a certain extent, you got to ask yourself: can the wildlings really let go of their hatred of the Night's Watch? And this is not going to be a step in the right direction for that. This is going to be continuing adventures of the Night's Watch versus the wildlings, and that's not where Jon Snow would have wanted it to go. Davos is kind of taking a step to save his own skin, but you got to think if Jon Snow was awake. I keep talking about it like he's asleep. I still think she's gonna bring him back, Tony.
I do too. We'll talk about what happened at the end of the episode and like the whole amulet and everything that happens there. But it's still been less than a day of time, so he could definitely be brought back.
But I'm sure when he comes back, Tony, as we're sure that he will at this point.
Oh, he's the first build character. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, Kit Harington is the first name you see whenever they start the credits.
I thought it was Peter Dinklage. I saw him later, honestly. But I could be wrong.
I might be mistaken, but that was the first name that I noticed.
Anyway, when he comes back, Tony, I gotta think he's gonna be like disappointed that these people are fighting with each other again. He's like, guys, I work so hard. If you're gonna kill me, at least I don't know that them.
It's like, did all of you already forget what the hell happened at Hardhome?
Yeah, are we all? And it's an interesting. They've seen the zombies. They know they're coming. They did it in the previously on thing where they show like, hey, this is what happens when people die in the north. They get zombified by the oncoming horde, and these people.
Maybe we should have shown Thorne that. Just send him a vision.
Maybe it just like. It's not great. These people cannot get out of their petty squabbles long enough to fight the larger threat, and you gotta wonder how that bodes for the rest of the realm, Tony.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because that's your first line of defense is the wall and the Night's Watch to keep those zombies out.
And you gotta think at the end of the season, at the end of this season, or one of the ones that's coming up here pretty soon, the wall's coming down. Yeah. I believe that. They've referenced, and they haven't showed it in the books yet, or in the movies yet, or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. In the books, they've referenced there's a horn that when you blow it, the wall falls down, and some of the wildlings supposedly had that horn, and they were talking about using it in their attack, and it never did actually get blown. But I have a feeling somebody's going to put their lips to that horn, and that thing's coming crashing down, and those zombies are there's nothing stopping them.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if that doesn't come into play later. I'm surprised they haven't already established that that's a thing.
I think they don't like to do that way ahead of time. I think that, especially for the show, they want to have those kind of details set up a little sooner because people are smart, and
people also study like every frame of this show.
Right, and they study the books the same way as well, and they figured out a lot of things that are probably true about parentage and endings and things. And so I think they like to wait until people are into it, so they don't have like 2 or 3 seasons to think about what was up with that horn. That's going to get blown eventually, right? It's not something they have to establish really early, and I think there's something to be said for that, where they don't play things too long.
Yeah, they're not setting stuff up that was happening in season 1. Like, you've got Peter Baelish doing that, but it's not like overtly on the screen.
Yeah. So I guess we should move on to the other stuff, which is what was next? The Homecoming?
It was either the Homecoming or Sansa's story.
Okay, well, let's go with the Homecoming. Get out of the North for a little bit. Although now that I think about it, my wife mentioned. Okay, so yes, Sansa was next because my wife mentioned after seeing her like in the river how warm everything looked in King's Landing.
Yeah, it's a very nice contrast. I've read about that a lot. That like one set of the people on the crew have to be in Iceland most of the time, and the other set is just like in the sun in Morocco. So there's very, very different filming conditions.
But Sansa Stark running away, going through the river, and it's interesting this turn that Theon/Reek has taken, because he's really been beat down on a fundamental psychological level. And I think maybe the watchers of the show don't quite get that the same way that the book puts it across, because the book just really...
I think it's starting to show, though. Like, there are people that absolutely hate Theon, and they'll be like, oh, he deserves everything he gets. And to a point, they're right, but he's literally been neutered, tortured, and everything else to the point where he betrayed everything and everyone.
He's a broken
even his own
man.
family. All he wanted was approval of his family and from his father, and he didn't, whenever he had the chance to escape, he didn't.
Yeah, and I think that him having the chance to escape was a huge tell, in a way, for you to see, okay, this guy, he's not okay anymore. But he does finally, he's with Sansa, they've worked together to escape. He's broken enough of that, and he goes off, he's going to sacrifice himself to these dogs, who he knows are messed up. He talks about, I've seen what they can do. You don't want to have that happen to you. And he kind of makes a futile effort to try to hold them off. It doesn't work.
The Sin City sense, it's yeah, they've got a taste for blood. Especially after what Bolton was saying about the girl or his former lover.
Yeah, and you in that scene too, I was thinking, okay, they're giving him maybe just a little bit of a sympathy here. Maybe we can see that he's something kind of similar to a human being, Tony. And then he's like, yeah, no, feed her to the dogs. I was like,
yeah.
that.
It was a fake out.
I don't know if it's a fake out. I think everything from him was legitimate there.
Yeah.
That he legitimately did.
He cared about her because she was different, and it was more of a curiosity than anything else, I think.
Yeah, care might be a strong word. She was one of his favorite pets.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing, just like with the dogs.
And he can't stand it when you mess with his pets. But they are still his possessions and his pets, so yeah.
But anyway, back to, they crossed the river, and, the people must have just figured, oh, they crossed this river and forded over and found the scent again.
Yeah, that doesn't work as well as you would think, but maybe it puts them off for a little bit. Anyway, long story short, Gwendolyn Christie shows up, what's-her-face?
Brienne of Tarth.
Yes, thank you.
With Podrick.
And they have a great... I really like this fight because you could tell that she's been writing for a long time.
Yeah.
And she's freaking cold because she doesn't immediately just turn these guys into mincemeat. They're not great fighters, but she's... she drops her sword a couple times. And I thought it was really, really interesting how that they let her... I mean, the fact that she must have been riding through the cold and tired and, hands freezing to the point where they barely don't want to hold on to the sword. That really made it a more interesting fight, where you actually did think, okay, she's not going to mow them completely down. There is actually a legitimate chance for her to get hurt here.
Yeah, and she always gets kind of the dirtier fights. She's got finesse and everything as far as a knight goes, but she's not afraid to fight like the Hound used to.
No, she's not. She will fight dirty if she wants to, but we do see that, and we see Reek again. Kind of come into his own. He stabs the guy from the back as Podrick's about to get it, which was interesting as well. Seeing him have a little bit more agency. Seeing Podrick, by the way, getting better as a fighter. He's not useless.
Yeah, well, he's been. Brienne's been training him a little bit, in their downtime, just showing him how to actually be a knight. And he's shown that he's braver than a lot of people in Battle of Blackwater and so on, but now he's starting to get the skills to go with the bravery.
And their little, sort of swearing in ceremony, I don't know exactly how you would describe that, but it's really her sort of, putting her sword down, saying, I serve you like I served your mother. And then Sansa, the moment where she can't remember the lines.
Yeah.
There was just something really neat about that, where she's kind of forgotten how to be a Stark, for lack of a better word. She's forgotten what it means to be a Stark, and she sort of lost that. And I think this is hopefully the beginning of her journey of getting back to that, of getting her I mean, way back in season 1, her wolf gets killed, and really, that's those animals are these children's hearts. That's their soul, and so from a certain perspective, her soul is dead.
And then you've got Arya's, which is still out in the woods somewhere, most likely.
Which is another thing that the books kind of hint at, or like remind you about at least occasionally. Like, hey, by the way, still a wolf of Arya's out there. He's cool too, by the way, or she.
I can't remember his name or that wolf's name. I know it's something a little bit longer.
But she's the leader of some giant wolf pack, like just running through the countryside, and Arya dreams about her at night. It's really interesting how they.
Nymeria is the name.
Yeah, I just can't wait for... Maybe this won't happen, but at some point I got to imagine that... I like to imagine that whole giant wolf pack just comes charging in somewhere and just rips some people apart. That would be an awesome scene.
Just they go after the zombie hordes, something like that.
Maybe. I would like to see them more against,
Lannisters.
Yeah, some human people. I don't know how well they would stand up against the zombies. I think that would be just a pretty
Or it could just
fight.
be them going straight back and taking the Boltons out of Winterfell.
Yeah, I guess they could be still in that area. But yeah, so that's still
that's
a
kind
thing.
of long-term speculation, though.
Really long-term. And a lot of these, we don't know exactly. I think in the trailer for this season, we see not Brandon. Who's the young Stark kid?
Bronn?
Bran, yeah.
Bran, yeah. Bronn is Tyrion's guy.
Wait, no. Bran is just Brandon's... Okay. What's the guy's name?
It's been a little bit, folks. Sorry about this.
Rickon. Rickon is who I'm thinking of. I am a smart. I got to him eventually. He hasn't been in the show for all of last season, and not much in the previous season.
Yeah, they're getting old quick.
Well, especially when they're that young. I think once you get to Arya's age, you're like, okay, we can kind of do it with makeup, but you can't keep someone like a little kid for super long.
Yeah, it's either recast or just ignore the fact that they had a full-on 9-inch growth spurt.
But I saw him showing back up, and I'm interested to see what's going to happen with him. And there are a lot of these wolves, and we get, kind of going back to Jon Snow, we find out that, hey, he had, his dire wolf is still there. It's still freaking out. We don't know exactly how that works or what kind of a bond they have, or there's magic going on there, but it's not specific of what kind of magic it is.
And they showed the wolf next to his body, but they didn't really say anything else about what was going on.
But anyway, moving forward to back to King's Landing, where we have the conquering hero, not really,
Jaime Lannister.
Jaime Lannister, who's finally getting back from his pointless plot quest for the whole previous season. I was so excited for that last season, by the way, with him and Bronn going off and doing their thing. Was Bronn on that ship, by the way? Didn't he head back with him?
They didn't show him, but I assume he was probably on that ship.
That might not be a great assumption to make. It's possible that since we didn't see him, and since she died pretty quickly out of the harbor, maybe they dropped him off to go and do some infiltration ops on Dorne.
That would be pretty good, except now, after what happened in Dorne, it's a little bit crazy for him now.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't change what he's trying to do. It would be pretty impossible, but if anybody could handle it, I think Bronn can handle it.
Yeah, he'd be setting up his own information network and everything else. But let's get back to the Lannisters.
Yes. So, Jaime's coming home. He's bringing the body. It's a really great moment for Cersei, because she sees... she's there. She's like, yes, my kids are home. And she sees him standing there. She sees the shroud behind him. She remembers, what the prophecy was. That, their gold their crowns shall be, and gold their shrouds. And she brings that up to Jaime. She says, nah, this was going to happen. I should have known it was going to happen. I really thought that was a fascinating look into her psyche, that she's starting to his reaction is more of what I thought her reaction would be, where she's like, prophecy schmophecy, basically.
Yeah, and he doesn't believe in fate, and she's just wrecked by it, considering she's lost 2/3 of her kids.
Well, yeah, I don't think she believed in it initially, but she's coming around to the point where she's like, I can't. I mean, you can say whatever you want to, but 2 of my kids are dead, and the 3rd one ain't in great shape. Like, there are lots of enemies all around him. This may not be.
She made a huge enemy for him out of the church whenever that all backfired on her. She's still traumatized from that and hasn't sought out any sort of vengeance yet.
Yeah, well, the church, I think, probably sees him as a potential pawn. I don't know that they're enemies so much as the High Septon is definitely trying to weasel his way into more power. That's my interpretation of it, at least.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly. His position is so interesting, too, because he's another one of those guys that you think, okay, he's not faking it. He legitimately believes in, the church and good and all this stuff. But on the other hand, he's not lily white and wonderful. Like,
Yeah, he's got the High Sparrow for that.
No, that's what I'm talking. I am talking about the High Sparrow.
I thought the High Sparrow was the Lannister guy, the cousin. And the High Septon was the old guy.
I thought they were the same.
I thought
old
they were
dude.
different, but I might be
That's
mistaken.
who I'm talking about.
Yes, the old guy that was in her cell.
Whatever you call him, he's definitely got his fingers in a lot of pies, and for the cause, willing to do a lot. Which I think it probably sums up a lot of people's motivations of the show. They will do whatever for the cause.
Oh, you're right. Jonathan Pryce is the High Sparrow.
Okay. I said High Septon to start with, and I think the Septon is actually the sort of the Pope type figure initially that they kind of depose. They're like, you're not doing nothing. Like, the real church is something else. And, the Sparrow's growing up in power and popularity. That is, that was a mistake on Cersei's part.
Yeah.
She gave them the power that they needed, and it was not a good move politically.
She's lucky they honestly didn't kill her.
She's not as smart as she thinks she is. That's the problem with Cersei. She has all these aspirations to political machinations and Machiavellian type stuff, but she just isn't that.
She thinks she's Littlefinger, but she's about half of that.
Yeah, she's Tiny Finger.
Just pinky toe.
I guess, yes. What happened next, Tony? I'm losing track of the order in my head.
Assassination in Davos.
Oh, yeah. Finally, we get the Sand Snake paid off. Like, they were kind of worthless that whole previous season until, they had the sort of really obvious thing with the kiss and, what's her face? Ends up dying by poison. And it seemed like there was a lot of potential for those characters, and they didn't get to pay it off. Except for a couple. I mean, there were a couple of great scenes, but I think overall they didn't do as much in the story as people were hoping for. But here in this season, we talked about how it's kind of correcting mistakes of the previous seasons, and this was a lot of what I was referring to that about. I don't know for sure if they'll continue to be awesome, but I really feel like they finally come into a sense that these are real players in the game and not just some weird ladies that are out in the desert.
Well, they full on usurped the throne and have power over Dorne now.
Yeah, which I like that a lot. However, man, they could have. I feel like they could have set that up better in the previous season.
Yeah, it just seemed like they were kind of an assassin crew instead of being actually having any sort of political ambition or anything like that. They were just badasses. They didn't have the full thing where they kind of want to go to war with the Lannisters and wreak vengeance for all the things that happened at the end of the Targaryen line.
Yeah, and I mean they had all that in there sort of in dialogue. We know that she's mad about they're not the Targaryens, it's the Oberons. Right?
Oberyn died to the to the Lannisters. They're mad about that, as well as all that happened where the sister of the king married married the Targaryens, and they were raped and slaughtered by Robert's Rebellion, or during Robert's Rebellion.
Okay, I was gonna say because they don't have any specific like if what's her face, Amelia Clark, Mother of Dragons, Daenerys. Thank you. It's late at night. We're doing this right after the show, so my brain is.
Yeah, this is usually Al's bedtime.
It is exactly at my bedtime right now, actually. 10 o'clock, time for old man Al to go to sleep. But it doesn't feel like if she goes to power or asks them to help, they're going to be like, yeah, sure, Targaryens, we love you guys. I think they're pretty much, the Dornish for the Dorn kind of, or Dorns for the Dorn for the, yes, something like that.
I'm not sure I follow you.
That they are for the Dorns, the Dornish people in Dorne. They don't have any actual allegiance.
Yeah,
to
the other guy that was on the throne out there was entirely about keeping peace and trying to keep out of another war, because he knew that the throne over there was protected by so many other kingdoms. And I think that the Sand Snakes understand that everything's kind of fractured right now. So if they're going to do this, if they're going to seek vengeance, it has to be now. And they can't rely on a weak leader who just lets their it's not their aunt, it's like just family members get killed off.
Do you think he was a weak leader, or do you think he was a guy who understood that there's no way we can win this war?
I think it was a little bit of both, in all honesty. Like, I think that he was afraid to take issue whenever he could have done more. But I also think that he's just kind of a peacemaker, and he'd rather stay in Dorne and, like, drink his wine and try to govern his people.
Interesting, because my perspective of him is less weak and more that he understands all the pieces a lot better. He is a lot more level-headed than, the Sand Snakes are. The Sand Snakes are fiery and angry and revenge and all this stuff, but they don't... I do not have a lot of confidence in their ability to govern.
Yeah, neither do I. And they killed his son, too, as he was painting stones to go over somebody's eyes.
That's a good point. I saw that. I just assumed it was for the Marcella, yeah. I just assumed it was for her, but then I realized, well, he's not in the same place with her, so maybe it's a ritual
he might not
thing.
Even know yet. Either way, like he ends up, you get to see the Sand Snakes being a little bit dishonest with their fighting. But that was still a fun scene.
That was kind of a fun scene. I think pretty brutal as well.
Yeah, you just all of a sudden see a spear erupt through his face. They're very efficient when they want to be.
Yeah, and definitely dishonorable. There's no honor going on there with them.
They aren't the Starks.
Not at all. Which I was kind of surprised by. Like, I thought that there would be a little bit more of that.
Well, that one Sand Snake was thinking like, oh, I was going to do this legitly. You didn't have to step in, but it's like they also have a job to do, so they're just going to do it.
Well, she's not even like, she's just mad because she stole the kill. It's not like, it's not like she's mad at her for tricking, or sneaking up behind her. She's like, no, I was going to kill him. What?
I think she called her like a selfish bitch or something like that.
Yes. Yes, she did.
Anyway, moving on from that to Daenerys' situation, we find her amongst a new Khalasar, or new Khal, in the middle of a bunch of Dothrakis.
Yes, who don't know that she knows Dothraki. And I thought that was a lot of fun. It's a trope you've seen 1,000 times, but it's really cool to see when someone knows the language, but doesn't let on they know the language for a while, and just sort of gathers, information.
Yeah, you play your hand whenever it's needed, but not before.
You don't have to tell everything you know, as they say. Yep. And so she gets taken before the other Khal, and plays really the only hand that she has, which is she has a lot of spunk. She's like, nah, I ain't sleeping with you. No way, no how. And she backs it up with, she rattles off her initial titles at first, where she's like, I'm Targaryen, I'm the Mother of Dragons, Queen of Marine, all this other jazz.
Yeah, Queen of the Andals, like 15 different titles that she has.
And none of that carries any weight with them. They don't, either they don't believe her or they just don't care.
Yeah, it'd be like telling Genghis Khan you're the Queen of England. It just wouldn't matter.
He would be like, oh yeah, can you tell me where to get there? I'm going to conquer you guys next. But she drops her trump card and she says, "You can't, you're not gonna sleep with me because I am Khaleesi for Khal Drogo." And you guys know the rules. You know that you can't have me. And so they're like, "Yeah, you're right. We're not gonna touch you." And then she tries to push forward a little bit further. She's like, "Yeah, okay, and take me home." And I really believe that she knew what they were gonna say, or at least suspected what they were gonna say. Tony, I think she knew what the rule was, but
she just wanted to push a little bit harder and see if she could get them to do it.
Yeah, because she does hold that card as long as she can, and she's not real eager to throw that down. That's just my interpretation. But she, they say, "Nah, you gotta go to," I forget what the name of the place is, but basically they're sort of the Dothraki have a city, for lack of a better word, where they have, sort of take their people to die and things, and there's a place where all of the Khal's widows are, I assume, just locked up or whatever, so that their law is that once your husband's dead, you can't be running around ruling Meereen and stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like with the Vikings and everything. Sometimes the still living wives were put on those boats to be sent off with the husbands.
Yeah, I kind of am surprised that, obviously for the plot purposes, it would be a little bit tricky for them to be like, "And now you die," because that's what happened to your husband. But I honestly, from the cultural standpoint, I'm surprised that they're so lenient as to not just be killing them off, unless going to the city and hanging out with the widows of the other Dothraki is just a euphemism for, you go there and we ritualistically kill you, sort of like, going to the puppy farm upstate.
We found such a nice farm. She'll be able to chase goats all day. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
anyway.
Khaleesi wouldn't enjoy that very much.
Yeah. And then you've got two people chasing her down. I can never remember the younger guy's name, even though I met this guy in real life once.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, at the Mile High Film Festival, he was in a movie called The Invitation, and I cannot remember his name.
Okay, well, that Invitation movie's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, it was good.
It's coming out in theaters now, or maybe on... You know what? That's not important. But
yes.
Him and the old knight guy, Jorah Mormont,
yes,
are chasing after her. And Jorah from last season had been stricken with the disease of the Stone Men, which is basically like leprosy with scales.
Yeah, you just turn into like basically a lizard person and want to kill people instead of just falling apart like you would with leprosy.
I didn't know if the disease actually made you want to kill people, or if those guys were just attacking them because they were coming through their land and they were trying to get their stuff.
That's true. It could be just raiders in the middle of nowhere.
My impression of that wasn't that they were some weird zombie thing so much as that they were trying to get, they were, they're out in the middle of nowhere in this burned up sort of ruin. They got to take whatever they can get.
Yeah, it's not every day that somebody with actual good steel is wandering through.
Yeah. That was a great scene in that previous episode, or previous season, though.
And that guy's name is Dahario.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you're reading the books, you can't ever figure out how to pronounce it, so...
Yeah, Dahario.
But he, him and Jorah are on her trail. Not a lot to say there, except that they are on the trail. They'll probably figure out where they're taking her and probably be able to rescue her. Simultaneously there, Tyrion and bald dude Varys, thank you, are on the trail of, I say on the trail of, not really on the trail of anything, just Tyrion's trying to get a handle on, okay, how do I keep everything from falling apart even more than it already has fallen apart? Which is tough in Meereen.
Meereen is basically just a husk of a city compared to what it used to be. Like, the streets are empty, it's pretty much war times, people are scared, and he's trying to figure out how to do it. And the first thing he does is tell someone that he wants to eat their baby.
Which is a great scene. He sees the mom with the baby, and he tries to give her money to eat. And he's trying to talk in their language.
Valyrian.
Yes. And Varys is just like, "You're terrible at this. You suck." Which it was nice to see Tyrion is the smart guy, and it's nice to see him not know everything all the time. Because he knows everything all the time, and that's a little bit annoying, honestly.
Yeah.
It's nice to have him have a little bit of a weak spot with the language.
And it allowed a tiny bit of humor into this episode that was otherwise pretty heavy.
It was. There wasn't a lot of fun in this episode, although I enjoyed it a lot. But I
did too. Like it's just every once in a while in Game of Thrones you've got something that's absolutely hilarious or some reference that's going to keep popping back up. This one was a lot of death, a lot of setting things up, a lot of ships burning, which is the last thing that they saw on their little walk. So they're basically isolated marine.
Speaking of fun, I do got to bring up the fact that the Cal there, his speech about how that seeing a beautiful woman naked for the first time, it's like it's the best thing, and the guys are like next to this
Conan
and next to
thing.
that, and he's like they go down this list and he says it's one of the 5 best things in the world, guys.
It was just a straight up nod to Conan back in the day.
Yes, which I think the Dothraki pretty much are as a whole species anyway. Species, you know what I mean?
As a people.
Yes, but he's that guy is kind of fun. You can tell that he's got his act together a little bit, because he's got the first thing he says to her is kind of a great pickup line, and also a really insightful a comment about his wife saying, "Oh, she's a witch, cut off her head." And he's like, "Even if I was blind, I know if they're telling me to cut your head off, you must be hot," because they feel threatened, which I thought was great.
The people in the line kept calling her like the pink people are afraid of the sun. I don't think Khaleesi could get a sunburn.
That's a good question, actually. Can she? Does it only actual fire, or is she immune from every kind of burn? What about acid burns, Tony? Would she be immune from that?
Well, I think that would kind of factor in with what happened with her brother, where like they poured the burning metal on him. Like, I don't think that would hurt her, and that's kind of like an acid burn. It's not like normal flame.
That was so metal in season 1, where she was just like, "He's not a dragon." And I was like, wow.
That was the moment that I was actually sold on Game of Thrones, because I was having fun with it, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, this series has me forever. Crown for a king.
Yes. That guy would not. I'm glad he got killed in season 1. But anyway, moving on to what is next, Tony? Are we at the end already?
We're pretty close to the end. I think the only other things we have is maybe talking about how Roose Bolton is kind of moving his son that he promoted to his son out of the way for his heir. Like, he keeps giving him crap, even though he's like winning battles and things like that. It's minor stuff that's not that important.
I did think that was a good scene, though. I mean, you're right to bring it up, because Roose Bolton, I think, does not love his son. He loves the idea of having an heir, but he spells it out to Ramsay that, hey, listen, you better produce a son here pretty quick. Sansa's got away. I don't know if you know this, but you kind of need her, and you need an heir, so that you can.
Starks will, like the North, will only follow us if you have Sansa.
Hey, he's just very, very practical about what needs to happen there, and so
now we know where his son gets the practicality on how to feed the dogs.
He's so much less of. I mean, I was gonna say less of a monster. He's still a monster, but he's not sadistic. He just does what he thinks he needs to do.
Yeah, because it's kind of the difference between like someone who's a villain in the story versus who's a cartoon character. And that's always been the biggest knock on Ramsay, is that sometimes he's just too evil for the sake of evil.
Yeah, I think within the confines of the series, he's because there are enough people with enough depth. I think I can forgive that somewhat.
Yeah. Well, you've got to have somebody to just root completely against. Especially after they took out
Joffrey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm hoping for a really great, brutal death for him. I think that's in the cards eventually.
Well, I mean, there's only so many people you can skin and crucify before your death gets pretty bad.
This is a series that at least a little bit believes in karma, and I think that the bad enough, as bad if someone's bad enough, I think eventually somebody like him is not gonna make it to the end.
Yeah, he's never gonna be the guy on the Iron Throne, that's for sure.
He's not gonna be one of the 3 like Riders of the Dragons or anything. He's out, guys. I'm pretty sure. You can send me your fan theories if you want to, but he is not gonna make it. But moving forward to close to the end of the episode, we get back to the guys in the Night Watch. They're still there with Jon Snow. The guys from the
Davos
outside.
is given a deal from Alliser Thorne, basically saying he can leave and that the other guys will be forgiven for what they're doing, which is basically just hiding in a room, being loyal to Jon. And Davos is just trying to figure out what his next move is, because he might be able to get out, but the other people won't. And that doesn't sit well with him. He's still trying to figure out what to do with Melisandre. And basically we end up going into her bedroom and seeing some weird stuff.
Well, she likes to show off her boobs, Tony, even if there's nobody there. And now we know why. Now at last we understand the mystery of Melisandre's boobs.
Yes. She takes off her amulet, she takes off her clothes, and in the mirror, like just this really kind of crappy looking glass, like you just see this figure, and it's light hair, just kind of gross, and then it pans to her, and it looks like basically 90-year-old woman standing there naked, standing at the mirror.
Yeah, and so the obvious implication is that the amulet that she's always wearing is some kind of camouflage spell. What was the word you would use? Oh, there's a special word for it.
It's some sort of illusion of like
yes.
And it might actually give her youth and vigor because of the way she moves and the way she's doing things. I wasn't sure if that actually transformed her into something younger or if it's just kind of like this divining thing where it shows what other people get to see. It's hard to tell.
It is. It's definitely, though, it kind of reinforces that why she has so much faith in the Lord of Light.
Yeah.
Because if that happened, if she's able to look like that because of him, like, you gotta know, that means a lot to this woman.
Yeah. I'm wondering if they actually had a different woman do that, or if that was like a special effects suit. Because, like, the look she had on her face was, like, perfectly paired. Like, they did a good job with that.
I would, if I was doing it, Tony, I would have a real person do it and then sort of digitally adjust the face a little bit. That's how I would.
That's probably the easiest way. But the way she just, like, she takes that off, she just glares at herself for a little bit and then climbs into bed. Like, I couldn't tell if that was her kind of turning her back on the Lord of Light, or if that was her just, if that's something that she does on, like, a nightly ritual. It's a little bit ambiguous right now. We're going to find out a lot more next week, I think.
I think that the way I took it was she's had all of her faith stripped away. She's had everything she understands stripped away, and so she's stripping away the last sort of line of defense for herself and taking off this thing that makes her look like the Red Woman, and she's accepting that that's not who she is, if that makes sense. That she's kind of giving in. I mean, it's possible that she does that every night. I mean, the fact that we see her get into bed lends credence to the idea that maybe she... But the way that they showed it made it seem like...
It seemed like it had been a while.
Yeah, that she doesn't want to see this face, but she started coming to grips with the idea that this is who she really is. I really hope that they don't just go with that for the rest of the show, Tony.
Yeah, I mean...
You can put that thing back on, Melisandre.
I'm a fan of redheads to begin with. I'm just going to say that now. So having Cance Van Houten actually being Melisandre is a little bit better for me. But I understand if they have to.
Although it does, so it opens up some interesting, like, if she can sneak away from some places if she needs to.
That's very true.
She could.
I also wondered, like, if she was almost just giving up her life. Like, is she so old that she's just going to die without the amulet, and they're going to give the amulet to Jon Snow? Like,
that
I don't think it'll go that way.
not what I think is happening.
No.
But I could be wrong.
It was just a random thought I had while I was driving home from this.
Yeah, it's so tricky to... My wife was a little bit annoyed, honestly, with how this came out because she wanted to know, like, well, what does that mean? And, I told her what, I just told you about her kind of accepting her, the fact that her power has left her and she's like giving up the last of it. But I do understand that kind of annoyance at like, well, what was that? Like, where is that going? It's not the same kind of cliffhanger that I would expect from Game of Thrones.
I would have been a lot more mad if that's how they ended last season than if we just have to wait a week to figure out what's going on. So
yeah, I'm not bashing
much.
it, but because it's so ambiguous of what it means to her. I mean, I've created something in my mind that I think is, consistent with what would be true, but they just kind of throw this information at us and don't give us any kind of context or whatever, and it's tricky. It's tricky to interpret that and know what you're supposed to think about it. I mean, the name of the episode is The Red Woman, and we're all sitting here expecting her to resurrect Jon Snow, and here she is wallowing in her defeat, Tony. Essentially, she's basically giving up here.
Yeah. And I'm kind of glad that she didn't walk in and undo what happened at the end of last season in 10 seconds. Because, I mean, she was right there. Like, she could have walked in and resurrected him all Beric Dondarrion style and just had him back up, and things could have been changing, and they would have been trying to figure out how to get out of there. But it's a little more complicated than her just, like, flipping a switch and resurrecting him.
It shouldn't be. I think she could have done it like you're talking about in the first 10 seconds of the episode if she wasn't so shaken. I think she's honestly forgotten about Beric Dondarrion. Or at least it's not in her mind. I think she's so obsessed with her failures and everything that's gone wrong and all of the prophecies that she thought was going to go a certain way and didn't go the way she thought they were going to go.
Well, do you think she loved Stannis?
To a certain extent, yes.
Like, if that might be part of why she's feeling this right now, is that she got a little bit too close there and basically thought that the Lord of Light would lead him to be the king.
I don't...
Especially after all the sacrifices he made. He sacrificed his own daughter.
Yes, especially after that. And I think that is definitely shaking her. But we don't have... And I kind of suspected that we weren't going to see the resurrection scene when they didn't do previously on Game of Thrones and show the Beric Dondarrion thing.
Yeah.
Because I am looking for that to happen. It's there.
They didn't put anything in the end episode teaser either.
Did they not?
Not for that.
I didn't see the coming up on, so... What was in the coming up on teaser?
They showed a little Tyrion. They just showed a little bit of everything. I honestly can't remember all of it right now because I was gathering my notes. I had about a 20-minute drive to get back here, so had to take care of that real quick.
I actually got started a little bit late on so it worked out for both of us, the time-wise, that we started about half an hour after the show. But I thought that this is a really strong episode, and it does a lot with what we've seen. It sets a lot of cool stuff up. It's not fireworks or anything.
Yeah,
but
it's not hard home. It's not like what happened in Season 9 last year where Daenerys escapes. But as far as an episode that is mostly dialogue, it's very good, and it has a few really good fights in it.
And I'm just watching this again. I know that this isn't anything that's going to shock anybody, but I was just reminded how good they make this show look, even when it's not giant special effects shots with zombies and stuff. When it's just people in the snow or just guys riding, through the hills. They really do put you in that fantasy world.
Yeah, it's the high up shots of like this gorgeous scenery or the way the snow is falling into people's hair. Like everything is just so well produced for it.
Yeah, and I like that. It's not just the digital side, and it's not just they really do focus on the cinematics and stuff, and it feels like a movie, which it kind of is basically. I mean, it's not an hour long. It's almost I got 50-some minutes, but still.
Yeah, it's $3 million per episode. You can kind of give something like that movie status.
Yeah, and some full length movies don't get that much budget. So, and when you're on a TV show, you can stretch that out a little bit more because everybody's already there and
you're using the sets and everything else.
So I'm
just glad to have it
forward.
back.
I'm looking forward to this season. I reserve the right to be disappointed by stuff that comes later, but I am not disappointed by anything in this episode.
And I agree. I'm just glad it's back. I'm glad that we're in territory where nobody knows what's going to happen. Like, there's nobody that can spoil it. We're all on the same ride right now, so buckle up.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. Like, now I'm more looking forward to the books to see, like, what are the details that he puts in, what are the differences. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Nope. No, the only thought I have is I need to get some sleep, Tony.
All right.
Because I'm feeling dumb.
Thank you all for listening. Remember, you can sign up for this at humanechoes.com. If you sign up for the normal podcast through iTunes, through Google, through anything like that, you will get these episodes every Sunday so long as Game of Thrones is on, so for the next 9 weeks after this. So thank you very much for listening, and become a member over at humanechoes.com. There's more information there. It's a great way to get the bonus podcast, a lot of other cool things, and we will see you guys very soon.
The night is dark and full of terrors.
Definitely. Bye.
Bye.